Well, Shabbat Shalom and good morning, everybody. Today I want to talk about something that's captivated the minds and the attention of many people out there, and that's the spiritual realm, even monsters, ghosts, goblins, ghouls, magicians, witchcraft. All of these things, seeing the vampires and all of these things that are today so popular that we seek them out in the world and try to understand them in some kind of a physical, tangible understanding. We have to remember that these things all are depicted in Scripture. Now, as we look in all the books and all the writings, and I'm not just talking about just this book, or, of course, we're talking about these books. We're talking about all of the writings. As you look behind me, you will see there are many, many books, many writings, and I say, look at them all. We should not be limited to just what some Catholic system of worship invented with 66. Ancient mysticism books, Jewish, all of the ancient books of mysteries, all of these things, look at them and you'll see a lot of this correlates straight into Scripture. So it's not anything that we're hitting on that's all new. This has all been here, been around. We know that this stuff's true. As we look from the very beginning of the Nephilim, the fallen ones that saw the women in Bereshit or Genesis, and they wanted to mate with them, they came down. We see a spiritual being that left the spiritual realm, a dimensional, the heavenlies, whatever you want to call it, but a spiritual realm. It left the spiritual realm. It could go in and out of spiritual realms. So to come down here to mate with women, they of course brought forth the Raphaim, and we see that they did that. And they brought forth all kinds of things. Here, the Anakim, this is the half Malek and half man. So you have Raphaim, Nephilim, Anakim. You have quite a bit of things going on here. And these are all kind of beings that are quite supernatural. The whole creation of the world, a supernatural, ever-existent being, all-powerful, all-encompassing, all-knowing, all-loving, pure, righteous, honorable, and as highly esteemed Yah, created the world out of nothing. Okay, that's just, and created all beings. First thing he brought forth was his son. It says, Bereshit bara Elohim Aleph-To. This is the first thing he brought forth was the word. The Aleph Bet, his son, the Mashiach, the one that would later come to save us from ourselves, if we so choose. So, then we see what else? We see Hanok. If you haven't read Hanok, read Hanok. You want to see the interaction and what they were doing? Man, there were chimeras. There were all kinds of things. These fallen ones' children were just ripping up the world. They were mating with women. They were mating with animals. They were going after each other. I mean, they were doing all kinds of wickedness. And by the way, the giants that came out, well, women weren't 5'3". If you go into all the other books, you find that people were quite taller, quite large at one point in time. So they weren't little tiny short women with these giant 10 and 12 foot tall men. It was quite literally, they were much larger according to many of the writings out there. But again, I don't limit myself to 66 books of the Protestant Freemasons and the Westminster Confession. We're not worried about what the Catholic, Roman Greco religion of the Catholics deems to be canonical. We look at all Scripture and all the writings, and whatever bears out to Yah's word, we keep. We have the flood in and of itself. The entire world and archaeology, geology, all bear out a great deluge. This happened. There's just no denying it. The judgment on the Tower of Babel, and the confounding of languages to separate us, how much more supernatural can you get? You have the plagues that happened to the king, or what later became the pharaoh, for taking Abraham's wife. You have the Misraim, the frogs and the scorpions and the blood. And I mean, how much more supernatural do you want to get? Blinding the Sodomites in Sodom. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, which we still have evidence that this, in fact, did happen. The purest sulfur ever found is found in that area. It's amazing. 99.9% pure. There's no sulfur like it anywhere in the world. No one's even ever seen anything like it. This has been, science has borne this out. The burning bush, the pillar of smoke, clouds. Then you have things, now you get into the Amalek. Now they only came out at night, okay? They found skulls and skeletons in the area in which the Amalek supposedly lived. And in this, they found horned skulls. They were humanoid skulls with horns on them and sharp teeth like fangs. Now, sound like a vampire much to you? Stole babies, stole cattle, stole things, killed, and drank their blood. Sounds like a vampire to me. Maybe not as sexy as the modern version of it, but certainly just as terrifying. And they had to go destroy these demonic beings. Now, we use that word demonic loosely because demonic really just means to have knowledge. From the Greek, is just one with knowledge. But it comes from, if you read what Hashatan, whether you want to call him HalleluYAH or Shinyaza or Azazel or whatever name you want to give them, these are all descriptor names. They're not really the name. They're actually kind of describing something about them. Shaitan means one who opposes, or the prosecutor or persecutor. So any number of them can be Shaitan. They're all Shaitans if they're against Yah's will. You too are a Shaitan if you're against the will of Elohim, of Yah. Swarms of locusts, firstborn dying, the death malek, the spirit or the breath coming down and taking the firstborn of everything without the blood over the lentil. The serpent in the garden, if you want, the Nakash, the shiny one. This thing, I mean, this is a supernatural being. We have Elisha out with his servants, Elisha or Elisha, or however you want to pronounce that name. It's Elisha, the prophet, is out there with his servant, and they're overwhelmed, and he prays and says, "Open my servant's eyes, and he might see what I see." And he looks around him, and he sees that they are surrounded by the army of Yahuwah, and that they are completely surrounded by them, and that they're in good hands. This is supernatural. We have the Beelzebul or Baal-Zebub. We have all of these demonic things that are happening around that. You have demons. You see demons throughout Scripture where they're casting them out. You see them where they're affecting people. You have Witch of Endor. You have the sorcery. You have magic. You want to talk about a supernatural book? You want to talk about monsters and things you can't quite wrap your mind? You have giants. You have four-headed beasts. You have things that with multiple wings that can fly that no one can perceive. You have all of these things. These are supernatural. You have in Job, you have Leviathan, Behemoth. These are two separate creatures. These things, his tail is so big and swings like the cedars. I mean, we have massive things. You have Shaitan, who goes in and out of these dimensional realms. He says, where is that you come from? In and out, he says, in and out. Okay, he's coming up and down, in and out through dimensions to see what's going on here. And he says, have you considered my servant Job? That's the one we renamed Job. Have you considered him and his righteousness? So we see that we have a being, a spiritual being, an opposer, one who is, or a prosecutor, or a persecutor of man, up there saying, yeah, take it away from him. So this is very supernatural. The fact that he's moving in and out of these realms, like a dimensional realms. We have the Large Hadron Collider. This is CERN. If you're not familiar with it, look it up. CERN openly admits that what they're looking for is not the creation of the world, that they're actually not looking for that. They're actually trying to tear open the dimensions that separate this world from the other realms, and that they're trying to allow whatever beings are on that side, because they say they have seen them. Many of their scientists have said they have seen beings. Most of them are terrifying, but they're actually literally trying to break open the veil between this realm and other dimensions to allow them to roam freely. In his own, we see dragons, we see all kinds of beasts. We also see scorpions with faces of men, hair like women, breastplates of iron, tails of scorpions like locusts and swarms over the earth. I mean, I know a lot of this is allegory and metaphor. There is quite a bit of that, but there, as we see archaeologically, there are skeleton remains of giants. There are skeleton remains of 12-foot men. We have 10-foot men now. We have 8-foot women. We have giants among us now. So to say that this could not exist or it's mythological is crazy. We have more cryptoid sightings now. For those of you who are not familiar with cryptoids, that's cryptozoology. These are people who believe Sasquatch, Dogman, all these different things. But a lot of them have seen things where they just kind of disappear, like footprints just disappear. They're gone. They're not up in the trees. They're nowhere. They're just footprints just stop. So these things are being seen by doctors and lawyers and physicists and people like that. People who have gone over. There's a book from the 1800s talking about a man who got lost at sea, then something. Anyways, he ended up into an underrealm down there where there were giants, and they talked of Yahweh. And so we have tales of this thing throughout all time, but we have actual physical sightings of some of these creatures too. Now, people say, are they imaginary? Are they people's dreams? No, they're spiritual realms. I believe these things. I think CERN and all the Hadron Colliders around the world are literally creating tears and rips in these dimensional realms. And we know there are many that are described in Scripture. So he says, I do not know if I was in the flesh or if I was in spirit, but he was caught up into the third Ma'im, or the third Shamayim, the heaven, in today's vernacular, that he didn't know where he was, but he saw these things, and this was just there. There's so many more, the Apocrypha, Abraham, and all the rest of the books out there. All those writings are talking about these spiritual realms. They're talking about these creatures. We have several ex-military men talking about the Kandahar giants and the Afghanistan giants living in caves. 10 and 12-foot men, giant, huge, eating people. And this is coming from military, ex-military. These stories are well known. If you go into the Middle East and look at some of their mythology, it lines up perfectly with the same thing of ancient Jewish mythologies. The Yehudi had these things ancient. Now, a lot of this isn't considered part of the writings, but all of this stuff kind of correlates to that area. You see the jinn are closely related to what we would see as these demonic disembodied spirits. We see familiars. And again, so you have witches and warlocks and giants and mystical beings and plagues and spiritual things moving in and out. It tells you not to communicate with the dead or conjure or do any of these kind of things. Well, why would it tell you not to do them if they weren't real? They're real. These things are real. Now, to what degree are they real? Are they tangible physical things? Or the all spiritual realm says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but that of the spirit, the powers and the principalities. So we understand that the spiritual is the real. It's this realm. It's this physical, tangible life that we're living in. It's not real. This is just a shadow of what's real. The spiritual realm, I think if our eyes were open to see everything that's around us constantly, especially now in these days and age where everybody seems to be worshiping death and wanting to invite demons and evil into their lives. I think if they could see what they're actually doing, they'd be mortified, terrified. There are people that have seen things, absolutely did not believe in some of these things, have seen things now and cannot cope with it. There are people that literally have gone into massive depression, even committed suicide. These cases are all over the place, and you can see them on local news, you can see them in world news. That this is stuff that people did not believe in these things and then sought them out, and after seeking them out and finding out that the realm that they were looking at is actually real and these things exist, they lost their minds. But guess what? We have a book that told us all about this. We have several writings, as you saw in my library, that teach you about this. There's a book of mysteries. It's an ancient book of the Yehudi, and it talks about it will strip away their clothes and give them hideous bodies, and their eyes will be big and black. And I mean, so it sound like an alien much to you? That these were the demonic beings, that these were the disembodied spirit and nefesh of these Nephilim, the Raphaim and the Anakim, and all of these various beings. So we see throughout Scripture that there were supernatural things going on, paranormal things going on. There were ghosts, there were ghouls, there were vampires. I don't know about werewolves. I haven't seen that, but I mean, you know. And then we have chimeras. It says that they were mating with animals. So are all of these things that are depicted that look like mythology just because they worship these sick creatures? Or were there other things going on? Today, we have all kinds of chimeras. We have laboratories since the 30s that have been dedicated and devoted to trying to mix and blend different types of creatures together. This has been happening for a very long time. What have they come up with? What's actually taken? What have they done? We've been cloning since the 50s. I know they say Chloe was the first, but that's not true. That was the first one they were going to show us. What else have they cloned? What else have they genetically manipulated? What else is going on out there? I'm just telling you now, the most supernatural, the most paranormal, and monstrous book that you could see. In other words, things that depict these things, that show you that they're real on some level, is this book right here. No matter what version you have, I have them all. So I'm just telling you, start there. But don't forget, put on the whole armor of Yah. As you start looking at these things, better remember, they're looking back. These things are real. There's a spiritual realm you cannot perceive. Pray for your eyes to be open, but be ready for what you might see. I just want to encourage you. Stay in Scripture, read it, understand it, perceive Yah. He is spirit. Can you possibly talk about raising the dead, about Abraham's bosom, about Sheol busting open the gates and letting those that were trapped there free? How can we possibly not say it's not supernatural, paranormal, whatever word you want to put on it? It's amazing. And it's all in the book. It's all contained in the writings. If you think it's not real, that's fine. You don't have to. But if you believe in the words in this book that you say you profess to believe in, and believe in all of them, understand separating what is allegory and what is poetic license from reality. But usually it's parables. I believe a lot of these things are real. I believe they did exist. I believe they do exist. I believe that even science, who say they're atheists, are now breaking open, busting open the dimensions and the realms and the veils that separate us. I believe as this happens, we're going to see exactly what it says in Hazon, or what we call Revelation now. In Revelation, we're going to see these beings coming upon the earth. We're going to see things that we've never seen before and couldn't possibly understand. You can't possibly understand any of these things till you've seen them for yourself. I had an out-of-body experience when I was young that let me know that the spiritual realm was real. I wasn't into any of that stuff. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't searching for it. I didn't ask for it. I wasn't around people who believed in that stuff. Matter of fact, I'll be honest with you, I don't know that I even knew that that existed until it happened to me. So I knew at that point that our Creator in that realm was real. Not to what point or extent that it is, but I knew it was real, and I've never doubted since. Like, again, wasn't around anybody talking about any of that kind of stuff. I was involved in sports and hanging out with my friends and doing just basic human stuff. So I encourage you, look into Scripture, look at the most spiritual, supernatural book with all the monsters and all the crazy beings that you can't possibly describe, the witches and the warlocks and the magicians and all the other stuff. If you want to know what it is, start reading Scripture, start reading all the writings, start looking into this stuff, and you're going to be blown away. But make sure you know Yah, make sure you understand who He is, make sure you under His protection through Yahushua HaMashiach, through His Son, through His blood. Make sure that as you dig into these things, you're well protected. Gird up, put on the whole armor of Yah, put it all on. make sure you are under that protection, because, man, when you start digging into these things, you may not be as protected as you think you are. Go look at all the stories of people that are so-called ghost hunters and all these supernaturalists and demonologists, and go look at some of their lives and how their lives have just been upended. A lot of suicides, even murders. Go look at this. It's more prevalent than the media is letting you know. This stuff's crazy. You have to understand, perceive, follow, love Yah first. Put on that armor. Walk in the light of his word. Then you can look into these things. But definitely know the real. To what extent? I can't tell you. How much is allegory? Can't tell you. I'm not taking a chance, and I'm not going to disbelieve something when I see it with my own eyes. I recommend, if you love the spiritual realm, if you love all this stuff, don't seek out the evil, the wicked. Seek out the truth through God's word. Hallelujah. We love you. Have a great Shabbat. Have a great day. Love Yah. Love each other. Thank you, guys. We'll see you soon.